my calendar while we're,
Okay,
well, okay, just send me an email.
I will. I'll do that.
Okay,
Take care.
you too.
Welcome, everybody. We're getting our Zoom going. Excuse me. Good to see everybody here today. We are saddened this week to learn of the passing of Kiwanis and John Light. John Light was here, I think, just about 6 or so weeks ago, something like that. He was in high spirits and everything. We were sorry to see his passing. We did know that his family has requested, in lieu of flowers, contributions be made to the Kiwanis Club of Roanoke. If any of you can so. We also were sad to learn of the passing of Robert Railford's father, Lucy, has passed away as well. So there'll be sympathy cards going around. John, starting as we go. Today, our introspection will be Gary Dirk. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Andre Brooks and Pegram Johnson. Gary? Thank you.
Back in the, many of you ever attended Dale Carnegie course? Well, my introspection is from Dale Carnegie book. I might remember one of these. And this is how to become a friendlier person. 9 tips here. Number 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Give honest, sincere appreciation. Number 3, arouse in other people an eager want. Number 4, become genuinely interested in other people. Number 5, smile. Practice smiling. 6, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest, most important sound of any language. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Talk in terms of other people's interests. And finally, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Thank you very much.
Please face the flag and join me in pledging our allegiance to the great country of the United States. I pledge allegiance.
Good afternoon. We have 7 guests with us today. And I would ask that they stand up with their Kiwanis sponsor when I call your name, except the first ones I'm going to call don't have a Kiwanis sponsor. But we have a number of Action Club members here who helped with the cleanup of the nature park. And I asked them to stand up. John Fouts is here, and Robin Fouts is here, and Robert Hairston is here, and JJ Harper is here, and I apologize because Mike Adams is here and he can be their Action Club sponsor for sure. And then I would like to ask Cynthia Gray to stand up with her son Taylor Renfro, wherever they are. Oh, they're way back over here. And Taylor also participated in the cleanup. And then I have, keeping on with the cleanup, Jane Gabriel is here with right over here, and her sponsor is Sherry Hartman. She's with One World, and thank you for your help on the project. And then we have, as a guest of Bruce Swanson, is Bree Dickerson, and they're at the very back table, and Bree is with Downtown Roanoke's Ambassadors Program. So welcome all, and for those of you who might be interested in joining, please do.
Today we'll have an autobiography by Dr. John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, President Ben. I'm a little deaf. I have a hard time hearing, so if somebody can't hear me, please let me know. I was born August 19th, 1946.
You do have to be loud.
That too close?
No, you weren't close enough.
Oh. I was born again on August 19th, 1946. And I grew up in Whitfield, Virginia. I was the fourth of 5 children and was fortunate to have very supportive and loving parents. My childhood was pretty unremarkable, Boy Scouts, school, and those sort of things. And then at age 13, my family suffered a tragedy. My older brother at 17 was killed in an automobile accident. Obviously, that was devastating. But I learned a lot from my parents, watching their resilience and their support and their optimism despite what we were going through. I then went on to high school. I had a wonderful teacher then that gave me a lifelong interest in history, which continues today. I had a number of very good friends that we remain lifelong friends and actually get together and have a scheduled reunion in October of this year. I was able to participate in a number of sports, football, basketball, and thoroughly enjoyed my time in high school. I then entered Hampden-Sydney College, a small liberal arts school here in Virginia. I had some interest in medicine, but I realized early on that I really didn't have the commitment at that time. And I decided to major in history because I knew I would enjoy that, and I did. I had a good college experience, I'm a member of fraternity, and again, made a number of friends that remain lifelong acquaintances. I graduated in 1968, and at that time, the draft was breathing down my neck. They told me that I would be drafted as soon as I graduated. There was no lottery at that point in time. So my brother-in-law had been a Marine pilot, and I decided I would go through the Marine officer training program, which I did. And after that, I was commissioned a second lieutenant and very quickly found myself in Vietnam as a platoon leader in an infantry company. It was a difficult year, and I have very mixed feelings about my experience and also about our country's involvement in Vietnam. But one thing that stands out to me was the dedication and the courage of those men that I served with. And this is exemplified by one, Donnie Howe, who was one of my radio men in my platoon, who received the Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery. And that stuck with me my entire life. During my time in the Marine Corps, I did decide that I would like to pursue a career in medicine. And so I returned to Hampden-Sydney and finished my my pre-medical courses and entered the University of Virginia Medical School in 1973. That first year was difficult. My younger brother, who was one of my best friends, had developed cancer and died that year. But I have to say that watching him go through that and experience it gave me a great deal of experience in patient care that was useful throughout my career. On the up note, I met a young school teacher named Jill Butler, who had grown up here in Roanoke, and his father was actually a member of this club and president of the club at one point. And we began dating and got married our last year that I was in medical school. We then moved to California, where I did an internal medicine residency at the University of California in San Francisco. We enjoyed our time there, but the highlight of that really was the birth of our first child, my daughter, Kristen. During my time there, I had developed an interest in autoimmune diseases. So I decided to pursue a fellowship in rheumatology. And we returned to Richmond, Virginia, where I did that at the Medical College of Virginia, now VCU. And interestingly enough, when I went there to interview, I met one of the fellows who was there, Joe Limmer. So Joe finished before I got there, but then a few years later, he turned up here in Roanoke. And as you know, practiced rheumatology at Lewis Gate. When I completed my training there, we decided to move to Roanoke. I forgot one important thing. My second son, or my first son, second child was born while we were in Richmond, France. So we decided to move to Roanoke. I'd spent some time here as a medical student, and I enjoyed, or I look forward to being able to interact with students and residents when I was practicing medicine. Not long after we got here, my third child was born, John. So now we had 3 children. Jill and I decided we needed to change zone defense to zone defense since we were outnumbered. And it dawned on me that every time we had moved, we'd had another child. So I thought, I hope this job works out. And it did. Really, the core of my enjoyment of being in Roanoke was my family, raising our children, participating as coaches when they were little and in their activities as they were growing up, taking them on camping, hiking, skiing trips, etc. And it's been very gratifying to watch them grow up into mature and contributing adults. I greatly enjoyed my time practicing medicine here in Roanoke, which was nearly 35 years. I worked both at Roanoke Memorial or Carilion and the Salem VA Medical Center. And I established relationships with patients over the long term, which I found very rewarding. I also stayed active in the medical education program with the students and residents and with the new medical school, Virginia Tech Carilion, when it was established. And I've been gratified to be given an award for teaching on several occasions by those individuals. I also remained active in the community. I volunteered at the free clinic of the Roanoke Valley. I was actually the team doctor for Salem High School for about 12 years. And I was active in the Arthritis Foundation and also the Roanoke Academy of Medicine. About 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I decided to retire. I've been an avid exerciser all my life. And as David Hartman mentioned when he gave his autobiography, we actually swam together 2 or 3 mornings a week for about 30 years. What Dave didn't tell you was that he almost made the Paralympic team in 1992. So to say we swam together is not quite right. I was usually chasing him breathlessly up and down the track. But not long after I retired, one of the best things that could have happened to us, my last son, our youngest son, John, and his wife and granddaughter moved to Roanoke. And now they have only about a block from us, so it's been a real pleasure. I've continued to work in the medical school with the first and second year medical students, and I enjoy that a great deal. And again, hopefully, Dave and I will be able to resume swimming again when he cuts back on his time. And I look forward to pursuing this experience we call retirement and remaining in the Kiwanis Club. David Lemon was nice enough to invite me to a meeting about 5.5 or 6 years ago. And I was impressed with this group's dedication and its impact on the community. And it's been a pleasure being a member of the group. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Sherry, if you would like to come forward and recognize the volunteers for the Horton Park project.
It's an honor to follow that presentation by our good friend John Pendleton, who actually was a part of the group this past Saturday that we're recognizing today. I got the most endearing email from one of our volunteers from Saturday, Randy Myers, who's I guess a relatively new member of our club, had signed up and came, was out there in the garden with his shovel. He sent me an email after sweating there, working hard. He says, that was one of the best experiences I have had, to combine camaraderie and physical activity and then look out and seeing the difference that you made, that's as good as it gets. So his apologies for not being here today, but I just thought that email summed it all up for us. So we're going to clean up, weed out, chill out event on Saturday. And I have a special recognition that was penned by our own Mike Adams, who had written the poetry that inspired us to get involved on Saturday. And I have in my hands a sampling of our little mementos, our gifts of thank you to those of you who helped. So on my table there, by Don Pemberton and Martin and Jane, are items that I want you to pick out and take home today. You can, if you're inclined to garden, I've got a shovel and a little pot for you to pick out from our table. If you're not inclined to garden, but you'd like to draw about nature, I've got packets of colored pencils for you to take home with you today. I'm thinking about that because coloring is a way to learn about nature. It's something I've just been impressed with recently. And Jane Gabriel, who's here today, is a Roanoke City artist and resident. She went with me yesterday to West End Center. And those kids, inspired by Jane, came up with the most wonderful illustration of log perch. Fish is endangered and at the center of why we're trying to improve water quality in our environmental projects is to protect that log perch. And those kids' illustrations are going to be in a book that our club is going to publish about the importance of water conservation and protecting that log perch. So big shout out to Jane for your help at West End as well. So get your gifts. I'm going to call forward first the Action Club because of this special tribute that Mike Adams wrote. Would you all please come forward, Robin and John Faust, Robert Hairston, JJ Harper, and who else is here? Do we have anyone else, Mike, that's here today? And Mike Adams, come forward as well. And then the rest of the volunteers will join in a minute. As they come forward, I'll read this certificate of recognition in appreciation of your exceptional service in our nature park garden. With heartfelt appreciation and admiration, Kiwanis Club of Roanoke proudly recognizes the dedicated volunteers of the Action Club, whose solid commitment and hard work have significantly contributed to the betterment of the community standard. Your selflessness and kindness have left a lasting mark and inspired. The certificate of recognition commends your remarkable abilities, the tremendous impact you've made through your service. Your efforts in picking up trash and weeding the garden, especially in that summer heat, have set an extraordinary example of strength and dedication. You reflect and demonstrate what we can achieve together. Your involvement with so many of our local service events, your continuous support have been important in fostering a stronger, more caring community. So we are deeply grateful for your many meaningful contributions as part of the Kiwanis family. Your involvement showcases the power of unity and inclusion, reminding us that everyone has unique talents that can create positive change. With this certificate of recognition, we honor your vital role in making our community a better place. Thank you for being an inspiration and shining example of compassion in action. Your presence has enriched our nature park and touched the heart of those who witness your dedication. So I will pass that on to Mike, who maybe will get that framed. But thank you, Mike, for putting that recognition together. Do we have, I know Don Witt may not be here today. I don't know if we have someone with a camera. All right, Emily Bailey is at the ready. If you want to stay up, I don't know if you want, you can go ahead and sit down if you like. Do we get our picture? Okay. The other volunteers I wanted to recognize include Cynthia Gray, who leads our gardening effort, where we're growing these wonderful wildflowers. Come on down, Cynthia. And this is her son, Taylor. We have the benefit of the expertise of Taylor, which is no small feat. He helps guide us every step of the way. I have a special gift for Cynthia with a butterfly on it. And other volunteers I want to recognize, John Pendleton, and we have Jane Gabriel McCadden come on forward. And John Ewer, come on forward. Don't know if Joe Lemmer is here. Joe Lemmer, come on forward. Jackie Bledsoe baked us muffins and started our day with some goodies. Come on forward. Bruce Swanson put in some sweat equity and helped clean up to the very end of the day. And I think Don Witt is not here today. Okay. Dave Hartman. I don't know if Emily, you could guide Dave Hartman to the front, but just don't run off with him. It's mine. This was the group that came out on Saturday, and boy, did they make a difference. They deserve a big round of applause. Thank you. Don't forget to get your goodies from the table.
Effort. For announcements to Spangler, Dave. And then Joyce Montgomery following Dave.
Want to make an announcement about the fund committee and John Pendleton. It's talking to David right now. I also swam with him. So anyway, the fund committee, one of the things we're going to do is 2 weeks from tomorrow. So Thursday night, be perfectly true. We're going to have a social slash dance. Chipper or the bands playing for it. It's just going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to get sign up sheets out, so we'll have them on the table for you tomorrow. That will be 8 days before the event. So 6 to 8 and graduation on the 24th. It's like the constant band. They'll have 2 or 3 other members. So it's going to be fun, and I think there are social part. It might be a little bit simple in the days where one must have the all over. Well, you know how to answer and because she's out today. The audience will just come back. We might go and see the August 6th,
Joyce Montgomery with the Ducky Derby. I've been selling tickets for 3 weeks now, and I have 1 more week to go. So the Ducky Derby is the Capital District Foundation's fundraiser. And the money that we raise helps pediatric trauma facilities in the Capital District. And Corellian is one of those. So the money that we're raising will come back to our local hospital. So that's a really important part of this, that we're able to see our money and where it goes. So have updates. So we started out, we were 5th in order. Last week we jumped to 2nd. And this week we jumped to number 1. So but we can't stop even though we're number 1. because we're not that far ahead. So we have another week. The drawing is on August the 19th at the convention in Richmond. And I will be there to get your prizes and bring them back to you. So their goal was 15,000. They raised 6,715 right now. So they're at 44%. So I would imagine there's going to be some rolling in soon. And that's why we can't stop. We have to keep the money going. As you know, this year they're not selling a ticket. They're doing Kiwanis. And I have told everyone that if you want to just give me the money, I will put in for you. So, because this has been a little challenging. So anybody who wants to give me the money, I'll be happy to do it. If not, you can go on the website, Capital District website, and donate money. So I appreciate what you have done, and I'm hoping that maybe we can get just a little bit. Thank you.
Joyce, people think Kentucky Derby. Somebody won. I think Mike McAvoy won, and it turned out to be real. I always accused Bill Piper that he was here doing Kentucky Derby. And it was it was a gift. That is further announcement. Officers will meet tomorrow at 3:00 in my office. Foundation board meets tomorrow. Meets today. Foundation board meets today across the street at Cat Trucks. And if you following or chasing around our grant applications, Bob Haberman is working really hard because that deadline is April 15th. So if you have, I'm sorry, August 15th. So if you have any of those organizations that you've been working with and you're trying to get these grant applications in, you might want to ring their bell. We have 6 today. Normally, I think last year we did 27 checks, 27 grant applications. So if you can get out there and chase down those grant applications so we can get them in here by the 15th, I'll get them scanned in and we'll be able to view them electronically shortly after that. And with that, I think we're ready for our program today, aren't we, Emily? If you would, please.
Good afternoon, friends. If you told me that I would be introducing a chiropractor as a speaker at Kiwanis about a year ago, I would have told you were nuts. If you told me I would ever go to a chiropractor over a year ago, I would also say you were nuts. So I'm really excited to have Dr. Stephen here. He actually is my chiropractor and has significantly changed my life over the past year. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say for us today. Dr. Stephen Hussey is a chiropractor and functional medicine practitioner. He attained his doctorate in chiropractic and master's in human nutrition and functional medicine from the University of Western States of Portland, Oregon. He is a health coach, speaker, and the author of 2 books on health. The Health Evolution, while understanding evolution is the key to vibrant health, and understanding the heart, surprising insights into the evolutionary origins of heart disease and why it matters. In addition to clinical chiropractic practice, Dr. Hussey guides clients from around the world back to health by using the latest research and health attaining strategies. In his downtime, he likes to be outdoors, play sports, read, write, and chat. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephen.
Hello. How's everybody doing? Hopefully I teach something today. Today we're common. But first about me, Emily told you some of these things, but I have a question. Lots of not going to define. And I kind of learned about my research that's whaling life affects. I got rid of all the side of it. So I practiced chiropractic for about 11 years. I practiced Ireland. South Carolina. So I want to share this picture. This is my you're not gonna see it, but okay. That's my uncle, coach. That's my cousin. I don't know where his hat is. That's the best friend, dad. That's the best friend. So that's Oregon, North Carolina, which became famous a few years back when the war and all started with the Little League World Series. That was a nod. Okay, so through this, we'll start with cholesterol, saturated fat. So back in the 1950s, part of these was rising aggressively. Before that, back in the cardiology works. Then after World War II, right, Eisenhower faced a kind of heart attack going on this. Data, we'll never know. That's what happened. And later, a few scientists repeated this study using all 22 countries available, and they found no association whatsoever between saturated fat and heart disease. Now, the type of research that we're doing is called epidemiology. Epidemiology can only show us if two things are associated with each other, like they're happening at the same time. So the example I give is if you're standing on the sidewalk and you see a traffic jam in front of you, and it's also cloudy, you could never say the clouds caused the traffic jam or the traffic jam caused the clouds, right? They're just happening at the same time. We're seeing them at the same time. And unfortunately, that's what the large majority of our nutrition research is based on, these types of studies that can only show association and not causation, okay? These types of studies also rely on people, but they do surveys. They rely on people to remember what they ate. So if you ask me what I ate over the last year, I'd probably tell you I'm into that kind of thing. Most people couldn't. Right. And there's also studies that show most people are not honest about what they ate over the last year. And that's what these studies are based on. There's also problems with these types of studies in that they have healthy user bias. So if you're trying to associate, say, red meat consumption with poor health, let's say someone's really into their health and they're following the health guidelines that say don't eat red meat, they're probably also doing other healthy behaviors. So how do we know it's not eating red meat or what's the other healthy behaviors? And vice versa, if someone's not into their health, they don't care, just eating all the red meat they want, they're probably also doing things that aren't that healthy because they're not into their health. So how do we flesh those out, right? And then lastly, these types of studies like to report things as relative risk rather than absolute risk. Relative risk would be, so like if I had a risk of something that was 1%, and then I did a behavior and it increased my risk to 2%, or 1.5%, let's say, then you could say that that's a 0.5% difference and it doesn't really matter. That would be absolute risk. Or you could say it's a 50% increase, which sounds way worse, which is what the headline is. And that's how it's reported. And that's the more relative risk. So lots of problems with these types of studies. However, there's also some types of studies like these that are epidemiology that show that the more cholesterol, or the higher your cholesterol is, the more cholesterol and saturated fat you eat, the least rates of infection you have, the higher cognitive abilities you have, lowest rates of stroke, lowest rates of heart disease, lowest rates of cancer, and lowest all-cause mortality. So how do we figure out what the truth is, right? It doesn't make sense. The studies conflict with each other. So the history of this is pretty interesting. So this is the idea that saturated fats may cause heart disease is probably one of the most heavily nutritionally tested ideas out there. It was all tested back in the late 50s to early 70s. They did a lot of clinical trials, which are way better than epidemiology type studies. This one here was called the Minnesota Coronary Survey, and Ansel Keys, the guy we mentioned before, was actually one of the lead authors on these studies, but he withdrew his name late in testing. And what they found is they replaced saturated fat with unsaturated fat in these people's diets, and they tracked them to see how much heart disease they would get, and they didn't get the results they wanted. And so here you can see down kind of the way, you can't see it from here, but this study wasn't published until 1989. However, the data was collected from 1968 to 1973. And so this guy, Christopher Ramsden, who's the author of the second study here, he dug up the data from the first study they did back in 1968, and he found that they excluded a lot of data, and they didn't get the result they wanted, but they didn't publish the study until 16 years later. And they published it in a very small journal. These guys had the clout to publish it in the Lancet and BMJ and all these different big journals. They published it in a small journal that nobody reads. And so this guy, Christopher Ramsden, asked the main author why they did that. And he said, we didn't get the result we wanted, so we didn't publish it, which is very questionable, right? However, when he dug up that evidence, he found that what the data showed in this second paragraph over here, it says that there was a 22% higher risk of death for each 30 milligram per deciliter reduction in serum cholesterol. So the lower your cholesterol, the higher the risk of death. This is another study. There was like 4 or 5 studies at the time they did that showed the exact same thing. This was done in Australia, and it basically showed that the more saturated or the more unsaturated fat you ate, the higher the rates of death of anything, especially heart disease. So in 1984, the NIH held a cholesterol conference, and incorrectly, in my opinion, concluded that cholesterol was bad, and that spurred the formation of this National Cholesterol Education Program, which was designed to educate doctors on the fact that cholesterol is bad and how to lower it. And pharmaceutical companies caught wind of this, and they influenced these committees, right? They had a drug that can lower cholesterol, so the more doctors that thought that cholesterol was bad for us, the more drugs were prescribed, and the more money they would make. And so they heavily influenced by funding these committees, and they lowered the recommendations. They funded the lowering of these recommendations. When they first decided cholesterol was bad, they said LDL should be around 250. Then it was lowered to 200, and then 150, and now 100. And now lots of cardiologists will tell you that it should be lower than 100, and which tells me we have no idea what cholesterol is supposed to be. But that the pharmaceutical companies have influenced this thinking, right? Now, these are all associational studies, epidemiological studies, or reviews of all the studies on cholesterol and heart disease, all showing that the lower your cholesterol, the more risk of heart disease and all-cause mortality you will have, okay? And that having higher cholesterol is associated with longevity health. If we look at the result of this one here, it says the idea that high cholesterol levels in the blood are the main cause of cardiovascular disease is impossible, because people with low levels become just as atherosclerotic as people with high levels, and the risk of suffering from cardiovascular disease is the same or higher. And here's a very recent study from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, looking at a reassessment, so to speak, of saturated fats. And it says the recommendation to limit dietary saturated fatty acid intake has persisted despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Most recent meta-analyses of randomized trials and observational studies found no beneficial effects of reducing saturated fatty acid intake on cardiovascular disease and total mortality, and instead found protective effects against stroke. It's pretty interesting, right? Very contrary to what the conventional wisdom is about saturated fat. And this is another very recent study that was done. This took 2,029 people and had them eat nothing but meat for a given amount of time. And they found that, it's called a 2021 carnivore diet trial study at Harvard University. They found that in these participants, 100% of them, of the diabetics came off their injectable medications. 92% of them, of diabetics came off insulin completely. 84% of diabetics came off all oral medications. And then an inflammatory marker called C-reactive protein decreased significantly in all the subjects. And 90% of the subjects had improvement in all diseases whatsoever, which is pretty fascinating. If you took a drug to trial and you did clinical trials and got that kind of results, it would be headline news everywhere, right? That's powerful. But yet we haven't heard about this study. So I'll leave you with that. And hopefully I've busted the myth that cholesterol, saturated fat, and bad for us. And I think are probably the best food for humans. So secondly, the sun is bad for you and causes skin cancer. So this is just an observational kind of association thing. States with the most skin cancer. What do we think? Anybody got a guess? None of those states are on there. States with the most skin cancer. What about Oregon and Washington? Some of the cloudiest states out there have the highest rates of skin cancer. Interesting, right? How about states with the least skin cancer? Anybody? It's all those ones we named before. Arizona, Louisiana, Nevada, Texas, Florida. Something's wrong there, right? Doesn't match up with the theory, but it's just an association, just an observation. Can't really prove it anything. So here's a graph of skin cancer rates all the way back to 1935. Pretty low incidence per 100,000 there. So what happened over the years here? People just started getting more sun, just going outside more, or was it the introduction of these more aggressive sunscreens? You can see here. At various times throughout over the years, more and more aggressive sunscreens were introduced. Now, again, this is just an association. This is only data from Connecticut. This is just an association, it's an observation. Can we say that blocking the sun with these sunscreens is blocking the beneficial rays of the sun is what led to more skin cancer? Was the toxins from the sunscreen putting on our skin led to more skin cancer? I don't know. It's just interesting observations. However, this is data from the environmental working groups guide to sunscreens. And you see these different chemicals that are put in sunscreens. Lots of them not even approved by the FDA are in sunscreens. And I'll just point out a few of them here. This one is titanium dioxide. International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified titanium dioxide as possibly causing skin cancer in humans, which is an approved FDA-approved ingredient for sunscreens. Octocycline has been linked to aquatic toxicity with the potential to harmful health. It's often contaminated with benzophenone, which is known to cause cancer, which is this is one of the ingredients in something that's not approved by the FDA, but it's still in there. And this last one, oxybenzone, can act as an endocrine disruptor and may increase the risk of breast cancer. Also a very common ingredient in sunscreens. So given that information, you see those correlations of more sunscreen, increasing rates of skin cancer. You have to wonder, right? What is it? Is it more sun exposure? Is it more people using sunscreen? It's something to question. However, when you look at the benefits of the sun to our health, it makes me think it's the latter. It's the chemicals, right? Because the sun and the rays of the sun, especially red and infrared, which is higher at sunrise and sunset, has been shown to increase blood flow, reduce blood pressure, heal damaged arteries, like literally heal the lining of an artery, and significantly improve heart failure. UVA exposure, which is higher around mid-morning, UVA from the sun, has been shown to increase nitric oxide, which is incredibly important for the health of the lining of the artery and for dilating the blood vessels, so you get increased blood flow and reducing blood pressure. Increase the blood flow and reduce the blood pressure. And then if you look at UVB, which is the evil one everybody talks about, that one will burn you, it's highest around midday. It's what's responsible for making your vitamin D. But it has been shown to decrease the risk of heart attack and stroke and prevent atherosclerosis, which are pretty powerful things. Okay. The other thing about the sun is it's what sets our circadian rhythm. And circadian rhythm is how linked up you are to the day-night cycle, which is incredibly important for health. Your body always wants to know what time it is and where it is on the planet. If you ever woken up in the middle of the night and forgotten where you were for a second, didn't know what day it was, it's pretty stressful 10 seconds before you figure out, orient yourself and figure out where you are. And so if your body doesn't have that information about where it is and what time it is, it can be in that stress mode as well. And so the sun is what drives our circadian rhythm. And it increases what's called heart rate variability, which is a measure of our stress response. So suprachiasmatic nucleus is this thing in our eye or in our brain that light shines through the eye and hits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's what tells the body what time it is. But that SCN triggers so many different things in the body. Light is incredibly important for triggering the body to do what it needs to do and telling it when to do it. So it affects things like hunger and satiety and fluid balance. We're talking about blood pressure, stress response, and more growth hormones, adrenal glands, thyroid glands, gonads, and produces melatonin, which is what's responsible for helping you sleep and have restorative sleep at night. And it's interesting that we talk a lot about diet and different causes for like neurodegenerative diseases, but light is one of the, or improper lighting environments is one of the main triggers of a neurodegenerative disease. And so we actually see that in those diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, that the suprachiasmatic nucleus has atrophied and has deteriorated because it's not getting those stimulus from the right types of light. And this is just a list of all the different glands that light cycle affects throughout the day: adrenal, thyroid, ovarian, testes, parathyroid, pancreatic, pineal, and literally every hormone in your body. So if you have hormonal issues, maybe it's wrong lighting. Maybe you're not getting the right type of light throughout the day to trigger. If you get all the raw material then to make the hormones, but not getting the trigger to make them or when to use them, that can be a big problem. So different physiology driven by circadian rhythm, the timing, hunger and satiation, cellular metabolism, cellular maintenance and repair, cellular division, cellular communication, cellular secretion, and the use of medication, supplements, and herbs. Again, you can take those things all day long if your body's not getting triggered to when to use them and how by the light timing and that circadian rhythm, they're not doing their job as well as they could be. So remember, I told you the circadian rhythm, the direct impact of heart rate variability, which is the measure of our stress response. And heart rate variability is heavily linked to healthy longevity and living for a long time. So the study found that in conclusion, healthy longevity depends on the preservation of autonomic function, in particular heart rate variability and parasympathetic function, despite the early age-related decrease. So maintaining your circadian rhythm by linking your body with the day-night cycle is incredibly important for maintaining heart rate variability. And blue light, which is most modern indoor lighting, screens, TVs, things like that, have this very processed light, which is more blue light, which never occurs in nature. The sun has blue light, but it's always balanced with red and infrared light. And these blue light cells, these blue lights can create a lot of damage and disrupt our circadian rhythm, especially at night after the sun goes down. So, I would argue the sun is not bad for you. It's not causing cancer, and light is very important for lots of physiological functions. And then lastly, very briefly, cardio or endurance exercise is the best form of exercise for health. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I'm not going to say it's the best. So problems with endurance. When I say endurance exercise, I'm talking about like excessive endurance exercise, like running a marathon, things like that. Like small amounts of cardio, 3-4 miles, something like that, can definitely be beneficial. But more is not better in the case of endurance exercise. And research has shown that chronic cardio can increase scarring in the heart, decrease heart function, increase plaque formation on arteries, increase inflammation, increase clotting risk, and it just leads to more injuries in general. You tend to sprain and strain more things trying to do that exercise for that long. And we look into the evidence, the research, maintaining muscle mass is the best indicator of longevity and healthy longevity as we age. So maintaining your muscle, that's incredibly important. These are just 5 of the many, many studies that reflect that. So we want to stay strong. So how do we do that? Well, first off, we're going back to animal protein and that red meat again. Animal protein is the most bioavailable source of protein, and to build muscle, we need protein. plant sources are not as bioavailable. Their body can't extract the protein from them. It may be there, but it's bound to cellulose, and it's really hard for our digestive systems to absorb that protein. And so 58% of a plant protein will be absorbed, whereas 92% of animal protein is absorbed. And we need at least 1 gram per kilogram of ideal body weight per day to maintain the muscle mass that we currently have. And then also we need a stimulus to the muscle for resistance exercise. I'd say 3 times a week. Doesn't have to be that long, just to failure. Just tell your body it wasn't good enough, that's what I like to say, so that we build stronger. So at least 3 times a week, weights, resistance bands, body weight exercises, or even this new thing, which is called blood flow restriction training, which is very easy to do. Anybody can do it. All you do is put a band around your like your arm here, and you work out your muscle, and it prevents the blood flow from coming back briefly and allows the muscle or tells the body to build the muscle back even stronger. So it's really interesting. You can look into that. If you're not weight training, that can be a really easy way to get into it. And that's that. So maintain your muscle mass and don't focus as much on more cardio and endurance type of things, especially as we age. So in summary, cholesterol, saturated fat, red meat is a healthy food. It was framed by the food industry as a cause of disease. While burning is not ideal, sunlight exposure at various times of the day is one of the best things you can do for your health. Don't be scared of the sun. Don't be scared of sunscreen. Building and maintaining muscle as we age is one of the best predictors of living a long time. Health advice from academic institutions or government agencies is not always the best. There's lots of industry influence, pharmaceutical and food industry influence on those recommendations. And then question everything. Be informed health consumers. So that's it. My website is resourceyourhealth.com. I'm also available chiropractic. This is my most recent book, Understanding the Heart. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes. Yes, entertaining basic consequences. I don't think that there's any direct evidence that they do. However, when I'm looking at the way that it's supposed to be, one wavelength of light, like UVB, is not natural, and doing it just like processing of food down to its one constituent, one component, like a vegetable oil, is not natural. So it's never going to be good for us. The best way to get light is from the sun, because that's all different wavelengths and color temperatures of light at the same time, and that's how it's supposed to be. So I don't like tanning beds for that reason, because it's isolating. It's just kind of like the blue light. You're isolating one color temperature of light, and it's supposed to be all different color temperatures. And the tanning beds are just UVB, and you won't be able to because UVB is never coming at you from the sun without UVA and red and infrared all at the same time. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good in general. Do that. Whereas like hiking, that's going to be more aerobic though, not necessarily building too much muscle mass unless you've just never done it before and you start to do it. You don't even get so far with that. But yeah, it's just going to be legs, which is fine. The legs are a big muscle, and muscles are our big metabolic organs. So we're talking about things like diabetes, which is running rampant throughout society today. It's largely a result of low muscle mass. The body's just not able to maintain metabolic health because the muscles are using so much of that metabolism. So strengthening any muscle anywhere is going to be a good thing. Yeah. So she wants to know the difference between a doctor of chiropractic and a medical doctor. And I'd say that clinically, a big difference is that I cannot prescribe medication, nor do I want to. And they can. But also, I guess maybe a little bit more schooling for an MD as far as like chiropractic is still 4 years in our baseline is like scientific education is exactly the same. they have to be residency and things afterwards, which gives them more training and more in a certain specialty. And you know, I consider myself conservative orthopedist is one way you can describe chiropractic. So, you know, most of the time, an orthopedic surgeon or orthopedist will, you know, they have medications, surgeries, and procedures, whereas I'm looking at the same things they are, joints and bones and things like that, but in a very conservative way. Like, how do we create health and motion in that joint conservatively? So that's the difference between a speciality. But yeah, those are the main differences. Otherwise, it's just as expensive. I can tell you that. But yeah, that's really the only two things, in my opinion. So I'll qualify that by saying that I, as a chiropractor, cannot recommend anybody take or not take them, but I can give you information a lot about statins. There's a lot of information about statins in my book, and I've researched it extensively. Cardiovascular disease is never going to be a statin deficiency, and so there's no situation ever in the research where cholesterol just decides to go embed itself into my artery. It's just not going to happen. It always has to be, and even if you look at what atherosclerosis is, it's clotting tissue. It's not cholesterol. And if you look, there's actually a study, I didn't put it in this presentation. The study recently came out that said that lowering cholesterol with statins has done nothing for us. It's not preventing heart disease. I mean, statins are one of the number one prescribed drugs, either pain medications or statin drugs, 1 and 2 every year. So they're very, very highly prescribed. Yet heart disease rates are continuing to rise. Atherosclerosis is continuing to increase as far as rates of disease. So if it was working, we'd see lower rates, right? It's not. And it's because cholesterol is not called heart disease. I would strongly disagree, and I respect your opinion. Yeah. Yeah. But like I told you earlier, like the whole theory of cholesterol causes heart disease was based on very, very poor science. And the effects that statins do have, perhaps, maybe that they have a slight anti-inflammatory effect, but it's not lowering cholesterol that's causing lower rates of heart disease. Sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's information. That's what people need to make educated decisions is looking information. Heart disease is not under my scope of practice. I provide information for people, contrary to what is proving to be a very, I would say, inadequate way of treating heart disease, because heart disease rates continue to be the #1 killer in the world. Despite the latest technology, despite the latest drugs, it's still the #1 killer. So if it was that effective, if cholesterol was the main cause of heart disease, we were lowering it to below 70 milligrams per deciliter per person, you'd think it would have an effect, but it's not. Neither are stents or bypass surgeries. They're just not. And I talk about all the evidence used for that in the book, which to me is just there for information. But it's personal for me too, because I had a heart attack at 34. So I've done a lot of research, and I'm the one who's going to care about my health. And the doctors, quite frankly, provided me with very terrible information, very contrary to the literature.
Dave.
Question?
One more.
Mhm. Definitely. Very good question. That it's close to home because of the adult sick and everything. The book that was written by that Macy. Yeah, and hopefully people who are familiar with that story recognize that it was a pharmaceutical company that drove that epidemic, that was concerned with money. And that's not the only one. And so rather than rely on these pain medications, yeah, what are some things that do to reduce pain? And chiropractic, if you look at the literature, is very good at doing that. Neck pain, back pain, headaches, it's very strong in the research that chiropractic can do that. But also just eating an anti-inflammatory diet, which research I showed today showed that animal foods-based diet is very anti-inflammatory. But also managing stress. Stress is very inflammatory. Reducing toxin exposure. So you look at the 5 big areas we're exposed to toxins, which would be food. So trying to eat organic as much as you can. Water. Our water supply is very toxic. Air, you can't control all your air, but the air in your house, you can make sure it's very free of toxins, no artificial fragrances and things like that. Cosmetics, anything you put on your skin is going to get into your body. And then cleaning products. Really all you need is vinegar and water. And then maybe some essential oil if you want to smell good. But you don't need all these toxic, heavy chemicals. And just the bombardment of chemicals in your body is very inflammatory, and pain is inflammation. So if you can do anything to reduce inflammation, you're going to help with the pain. But also, shockingly, like I said, circadian rhythm. It's like syncing your body into the day-night cycle is incredibly important for triggering your body to do what it needs to do when it needs to do it. And that includes decreasing inflammation. And interesting, there's a lot of stuff about grounding. You've heard of grounding, like putting your feet directly on the earth, like in the grass. Incredibly anti-inflammatory. Because your body is a conductive surface and the earth is a conductive surface. So if you put your feet on the ground, it soaks up electrons. So that's free, that's something you can go do right now.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
It's our tradition to provide an honorarium. This week's honorarium goes to the Children's Health Defense. Thank you again. Good program. Appreciate you being here. Next week, we'll have Mountain Castle Soil and Water Conservation introduced by Tom Miller. If there's nothing else for the good of the cause, I say we're adjourned.
Actually, the speaker is Tim. Oh, Tim.